Now we're going to implement the detection of links in individual tweets and the invocation of the web browser task in order to be able to see the web page or the photo that's attached to that tweet. And we're also going to talk a little bit about tombstoning, which you need because when the user goes off to the web browser task, your app may not only be pushed into dormant, but may be pushed into the tombstone state. And what we want to do is detect when we come back from the tombstone state, which is something you can do in the Windows Phone 7.5 SDK, and reload the list for them automatically. So let's take a look at how that works and how we can use some features in Visual Studio to test to make sure that's actually happening properly. So first, let's implement the detection of links in the individual tweets. We'll go to our tweet monitor here and go down to the main list box selection changed and bring in a full implementation of that. And let's take a look at what that looks like. Since links in tweets are not actually hyperlinks in the traditional sense, there's no markup to tell us that that's a link. So what we actually have to do is to parse the data ourselves, looking for HTTP and then determining the complete length of the link. So as we always do in any list box selection change, we check to make sure we're not getting a selected index of -1. If we are, we just get out of here. If we have a selected index, we just ask the list box for that tweet object. And in that tweet object, we have the text value from the contents field. And then we're going to just do some pretty straightforward string processing. We're going to go look to see whether or not the letters HTTP appear there at all. If they do, then we're going to start accumulating text beginning at the HTTP until we run into a blank. Because we're using the web browser task, we don't have to be real persnickety about how we gather the link, because if the link is bad, the web browser task will simply say bad link. But for 99.9% of the tweets out there, they all have HTTP in them, and now we've got a way of collecting that. We take that result, we turn it into a string. If we end up with something greater length than 0, we create an instance of the web browser task, create a URI based on the link we extracted, and tell the task to show itself. If you tap on a tweet and there's no link, we put up a message box saying, no link found in that tweet. And then finally, as always, we set the selected index equal to -1. So let's go ahead and run this version, verify that we have our link detection running. So once again, back to the tweet monitor, type in my Twitter handle again, get a list of things. Now you saw it say downloading, and now it says download complete. So you can see that our feedback to the user is working. And let's go back to our TechCrunch article for smarter apps. And we fire up the IE web browser like we saw in the introductory demo, and there's our page. And now when we click the back button, we come back to our app. Let's think about what happens when we go off to that web browser task. Essentially, it's opening up another application, and we can see that by starting it up again and then holding down the back button to go into multitasking mode. So you can see there's the IE task, and here's our tweet monitor task, actually running simultaneously. If IE starts consuming large quantities of memory, we might get booted out into the tombstone state, in which case when we hit the back button, it'll say resuming, relaunch our app, but unless we handle the resuming logic properly, we'll just end up with our blank user experience with nothing in the list box and nothing in the Twitter handle, because we won't know that we've been launched and we need to go retrieve that. So let's implement that. We'll come back to our app here. And now in the app.xaml code behind, there are a number of methods, such as application activated, closing, deactivated, and launching, that we can use to detect what's going on. So let's put in a version of app.xaml and take a look at what we've done there. So we started out by putting in some debug code into all these app launching, app activated, application deactivated, and application closing, so that when we run the application, we can see some things going on in the debug console. In addition, beginning with Windows Phone SDK 7.5, I guess the SDK is actually called 7.1, the consumer version of this is called 7.5, the activated event arg that comes into the application activated handler here actually has something that says, is application instance preserved, which is the Boolean flag that says, was the app tombstoned by the operating system? So we've declared a static variable called app was tombstoned, and every time we get called here, we set that variable so that we can detect it in our page code, which we'll see in a minute. And we then look at this flag and write some stuff out so that we can see what's happening with the app. That's all we need to do here. Just to be clear, we added this static Boolean property up here, and we let it initialize to false by default. We don't do it in the constructor because the constructor would then set it so we wouldn't be able to see it properly in the page. So this is half of the tombstoning story. For the second half of the tombstoning story, we come back over here to our main page and add some additional code. What we're going to do is we're going to add an implementation of onNavigated_to. Now this gets called every time we navigate to the page. And so we call the base class to get all the appropriate system things out of the way. And then we start out by initializing our text block. Remember, which is where we put downloading, downloaded, and download failure to the empty string because it's not quite sure what we're doing with it yet. And then we go from the isolated storage settings and get the user handle and put it into the text box. Now, if we're coming back in here because we were tombstoned, then we also need to reload the list. If we're coming back in here because we've simply been reactivated from the dormant state, the list is already intact and we don't need to reload it. Now, you might be asking yourself, how do we test this? Do I have to find an IE page that's going to consume all of memory? No, the nice folks at Microsoft added a property on the project here in the debug section which says tombstone upon deactivation while debugging. So when we click this, when we go off to IE, our application is going to be automatically tombstoned so that when we come back to it, we'll be able to test this code. So we're going to run it once this way, and then we'll uncheck this and verify that it will work in a non-tombstone situation as well. So here we go. Back to the emulator. We're going to click Update, download some things. You can see we got application launching and onNavigated_to output here, meaning we started up the app and we got to our page. Now when we come down here and click on the link, you're going to see application deactivated. That's the call that happens when your app gets tombstoned. Here we are in IE. Now when we click the back button, saw the resuming there very briefly, the application activated event got called and we detected that we were tombstoned reactivation. So we set the flag. When we came back to the page, we reloaded the list from Twitter. Now let's go and try the whole thing again, turning this flag off to verify that we work when we're just in the dormant state. All right, here we go. We'll do our update. We'll scroll down off to TechCrunch. You can see we got deactivated, but we're not actually tombstoned because when we come back, we get onNavigated_to, but we're not tombstoned, so we know that our list is already filled in. And you can visually detect the difference because it doesn't say download completed because we didn't have to re-download the data that's in our list box. Now we've done the UX, we've accessed Twitter with the web client, we've updated our network connectivity to be more professional, we've detected links, and we've handled tombstoning. Time to move on to the live tile updates and then finally on to the background agent processing.